Welcome to the latest episode of 5 on the Floor on the 5 Reasons Sports Network. Also, you can find us every day on the Nothing But Net channel on Dash Radio. So just download the Dash Radio app. It's free. Search for Nothing But Net, and you can find us every day from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. on the East Coast and 7 a.m. to 8 a.m. Pacific. Also, check out 5reasonsports.com. As we're speaking, Brady Hawk is putting up his latest takeaways piece, so check that out. We are free, no paywall, and all of our Marlins content from David Fernandez and others. You can also get all of our podcasts. 3 Yards Per Carry did their big training camp preview with Tua about to speak for the first time to the media since he's come to Miami. So check that out, as well as our T-shirts, including our new Tua franchise shirt and all of our Heat shirts. Also, check out all the great sponsors of the 5 Reasons Sports Network. We appreciate all of them. All of them are local, and all of them helped us get through the COVID crisis so that we could still give you the kind of content we're giving you. And one of them is You Break Wheel Fix, which is located just south of Aventura in North Miami. They've got 15 years of experience in wheel repair and refinishing. They do repairs of cracked, bent, curbed, and damaged wheels. They also do refinishing and powder coating back to factory specifications, along with over 5,000 available custom colors. That includes the cool as hell Vice colors. So make sure you check those out. They've got those themed wheel colors after your favorite South Florida team. So visit You Break Wheel Fix on Twitter or Instagram or Facebook or even LinkedIn, or contact Mark and everybody works with him at 305-748-0112. That's 305-748-0112. The website, youbreakwheelfix.com. And now, today's episode.
Welcome to 5 on the Floor, a Miami Heat and NBA podcast from Ethan Skolnick with Alphonse Sidney, aka Alf954. Brought to you by the 5 Reasons Sports Network.
All right, Ethan Skolnick back here on 5 on the Floor. Here is today's floor plan. I've got Alf, I've got Alex, and I've also got Greg. I think Alex is going to pop off for some of these Zoom calls. We're going to talk a little bit about tonight's loss to Oklahoma City. I don't think the win-loss is all that meaningful. In the end, it was basically Tyler Herro and 4 guys who aren't really going to be in the rotation who were out there with him at the end, but they lose on a Mike Muscala 3. They are in the 4-5 matchup against Indiana, which beat Houston, which means Philadelphia is going to be 6th, and so we know that the Heat will be playing the Pacers. We're going to bring you a special Heat Pacers preview over the weekend with 2 of the writers who cover the Pacers the closest. But what we're really going to do today, guys, and let's start. I don't even want to talk much about this game, to be honest. I think we just folded in to what we're talking about in terms of the entire bubble because it didn't mean that much to Miami. We're going to talk about the 5 biggest developments in the bubble through the scrimmages, through these 7 games, and as they head into the playoffs next week. And we kind of did this on our text string before we started, so we'd have an idea. The number one to me is health, because you didn't know when you came into this. You had Bam and Nunn, and DJJ testing positive for COVID. You had Jimmy Butler hurting his foot, Goran Dragic hurting his ankle inside the bubble. But as we go into next week, everybody is healthy except for Kendrick, who has passed all the quarantine protocols, did pass the test, but wasn't feeling well, so he was kept away from the team today. About as well as it could have gone, right, Greg?
Yes. I mean, I think there's still some outstanding stuff with Kendrick Nunn that we want to see different in terms of just availability there and feeling good. And the Jay Crowder thing tonight was not particularly great. He looked like he bumped knees. So we want that to obviously be all, ready to go. But other than that, I think that we're good. I mean, Jimmy, Goran, they both look like they're themselves. Nobody else ended up getting any kind of lingering injury that we're hearing about or that anybody's limited in any way. So for the most part, you got through it unscathed. And it's playoff time.
Yeah, I mean, there's no doubt about it here. I'm honestly, other than Kendrick Nunn, and we've already seen the issues with him, it's very good to see Goran looking spry as ever. Jimmy can still bruise and muscle his way to the rim whenever he wants. I'm not really worried about him. I know he's going to do his thing. But it really is good to see the team healthy, right? And we talked a lot about Tyler Herro and Myers Leonard being out for the second half of the season. But at the end of the day, Tyler's the one that matters here, right? And we're not even really seeing Myers here. And is this version of the team I think I'm actually a little bit higher on it, man. I think I see where Spo is going here, and I feel like I'm always kind of backing his decisions. But taking Myers out of the rotation, and I'm somebody who kind of wants him in for bigger matchups, taking him out of the rotation and taking out one less defender, and by the way, not having Kendrick Nunn out there, take another defender that's not there, I think it's just helping them out a lot. I really like what this team is giving them right now, and I think everybody looks good.
Al, the big
thing I
concern
think
was Jimmy last week, and then Goran. I mean, I haven't seen anything from either of those guys that makes me think they're bothered by what they went through last week.
I will say the Jay Crowder thing concerns me a little bit, and watching Myers tonight, he doesn't look right. So
yeah, it's because he's not next to Bam.
I don't even know if it's because he's not next to Bam. The guy was never a quick. He's not known for his quickness in the first place, but he was slower than usual, and that's saying a lot.
Well, listen.
He was more hesitant than usual, and I know he hasn't played in a while, but honestly, the guy doesn't look right. So
he made the play of the game. Him giving up that 3 to Mike Muscala at the end so that the Thunder could take the lead was the play of the game, because now the Heat are going to have better draft position. It doesn't affect anything with the playoffs. Shout out to you, Myers Leonard.
Okay, but I'm talking seriously as far as injury concerns. I don't think he's physically right. And just watching him tonight, I don't think it's rust. I just don't think he's physically right. And then if Jay Crowder, hopefully Jay Crowder is fine, because that would be super concerning.
Yep.
If Myers is looking like Myers is looking right now, and Jay Crowder is going to miss any kind of time, I would be concerned. But it looks like, Jay Crowder was up and cheering. I think he's going to be fine. So I think on Friday they shouldn't play anybody. Mm-hmm. Chris Silva should get 48 minutes. And just ride into the playoffs on this wave.
Greg, you mentioned something off the pod here that we probably should get into. Bam specifically, he did talk about not having his wind early on, and he hasn't. He's had flashes of his old self. There's no question, like it's in there, but maybe it hasn't been quite as consistent or as sustained through games as we saw during the regular season. Where would you put Bam's percentage right now?
I would ultimately say you're probably somewhere in the 80th percentile of what we think Bam can be when he's firing on every single cylinder. Because you're right, like we've seen it in spurts, so we know it's there, and I don't think it's necessarily anything that's super concerning. But when you don't see it sustained, and there's also, there's been a couple nights where he's admittedly, talked about getting back into, rounding back into physical shape. As you just get into, these playoff games that get more physical, ultimately, I think the games, even though contrary to what we're seeing, there's going to be moments against Indiana specifically where the game slows down. And it'll just be interesting to see how that wear and tear is with Bam because of all of the things mentioned. So, ultimately, it's not something that I'm uber concerned about, but because we only saw it in brief spurts and not every single moment, I think it's worth monitoring.
And Alex is on the Zoom calls right now. He says, Jay, everything is clean with Jay. So the Jay Crowder injury is not significant. He would, if Friday was a playoff game, I'm assuming he would play. But I'm assuming just because it's not a playoff game and it's completely insignificant, I'm betting he won't.
Well, and let's get to that real quick before we get to the other biggest things that happened in the bubble. Who should play Friday? You joke about Chris Silva playing 48 minutes, but how deep should Eric go in terms of shutting this thing down? You don't play Jimmy, right? You don't play Goran. You play Kelly a little bit, I guess. You play DJJ a little bit.
I think you play Nunn to get him comfortable.
Sure. That's a great call. Historically, Spo has played young guys. So, even though Herro and Duncan Robinson are obviously, key pieces, Duncan Robinson in particular, if we go by history, Spo's going to play the young horses and he's not going to worry about it. DJJ is another guy. I think he'll get tons of minutes, but I think other than that, you'll start to see Crowder, Bam, Jimmy, Goran. Those guys are all going to sit.
All right, let's get to number 2. So we talk about health, and I think all things considered, when you look at what's happened to other teams, particularly Philadelphia, with their situation, Indiana not getting Sabonis back, what's happened to Utah without Bogdanovich, which is basically the floor caved in. And what's happened with some other teams, Denver had a ton of injuries coming into this thing. Miami's pretty clean. Milwaukee's had some nagging things. Toronto's had a couple nagging things. They're pretty healthy. Boston's been dealing with Kemba. I don't think that the Heat can complain about their situation. They handled the Jimmy Dragic thing correctly. They played them in the game that mattered. So I think it's worked out. So let's get to number 2. To me, the single biggest on-court development in the bubble is that Herro and Duncan Robinson took the leap. And maybe it's not the ultimate leap that Tyler's going to take, but as we've discussed many times, this is not Tyler's rookie season anymore. And he didn't look like it. It basically looked like, he fast-tracked a master's class here in 2 weeks. Like he was doing things, at the end of this that he was not doing in the regular season. Like
his last 4 games, Ethan, his last 4 games, he's been amazing.
Yep. He looks like he has star potential. And although, I think we kind of sensed that a little during the season, there were some rough patches. There were some periods of time where he did look a little overmatched. He didn't look overmatched in the bubble. And the second one, and I think we should put them together, is Duncan. Today, we could talk about the threes, and the threes are every shot looks like it's going in. Even the ones he misses, they're halfway down. Every shot, it doesn't matter where his feet are positioned when the thing starts. They always end up in the right position when he finishes. But the thing that got me was that show and go. Like, what is happening here?
I know. It's developing before our eyes. You could make the case that Herro and Duncan playing the way that they are, that if that continues on through a playoff run, it's the single biggest thing that could, overall. I don't know that we're looking at this team as a title, championship level team. So when you're thinking about implications today and tomorrow, do you know what having 2 shooters like this all of a sudden popping, like it raises the ceiling of the team in ways that I don't think we could have expected. You hope for this kind of thing, but it usually doesn't come with the overall, all around stuff that we're seeing from Duncan in moments, and Herro is expanding his game. So it's pretty remarkable to see. And now with the playoff stage, you got more national attention. I think it's kind of the perfect storm for the Heat as they kind of flaunt the young core to the rest of the NBA.
Well, the funny thing is, a lot of people have been sharing some college and G League clips of Duncan Robinson taking guys off the dribble and dunking in the lane, and just showing more of what he's capable of outside of just being a spot up shooter. And we're starting to see more of that. When guys get more comfortable, they're able to show off a little bit more. And those things are just going to help a guy like Jimmy Butler and Bam Adebayo. Those are the guys that are going to benefit the most from Tyler and Duncan being able to create off the dribble, make good decisions, great passes. Tyler has done some skip passes the last couple of days that I didn't know he was even physically capable of. I didn't know he had the strength to do some of these passes. So, yeah, those things are very, very heartening as a Heat fan. But more importantly than anything else, it just allows Jimmy and Bam to focus more on the defensive end and not have to carry the load so much offensively. Because we've seen what's been happening lately, especially with Bam. While Bam is playing he has a lone big role. He is expending so much energy on defense. His offense has suffered, and if his offense is going to suffer, somebody else has to pick up the load. Especially because Bam has been such a playmaker. These guys being able to pick up the playmaking load is huge, and it's something to look at going forward.
Yeah, I want to get to this quote because Alex has jumped on the calls. Duncan Robinson on what happened with Chris Paul. I'm not exactly sure. I shot faked in the corner, and I told him I should have shot it. We just went back and forth there for a little. Duncan, we've talked about, has people don't think so, but he's a trash talker. He can be. And we saw what happened afterwards, which is that Jimmy went at CP3. Tried to bulldoze CP3.
I love it.
You're going after a guy. The fact that Jimmy does that, to me, is so significant in the sense that you're going at one of the sort of the stars of the league, the faces of the league in a lot of ways. It's not just on the court, but off the court. He basically was the face of returning the Heat, the NBA to the bubble in a lot of ways. And you're going after him directly to basically support a guy who, as you mentioned, was playing at Exeter Williams College, okay, and undrafted out of Michigan. And actually, we're going to have Duncan's coach from Exeter on next week to talk about where some of this stuff was in his game. But, I mean, it's remarkable. And just the very fact that they made a decision in this game, OKC, and I know it was not the biggest game, but they started their regular starting lineup. I mean, they didn't have Schroeder, but they started everybody else. That they were going to put CP3 on Duncan a lot. Like, their smartest, craftiest defender.
Yep, he's arrived. And seeing Jimmy do that, you know, like, particularly because he's the all-star, he's the face of the franchise, the max guy, to see him immediately with deliberate intention make sure that it was known that, hey, you're not going to go after my guy. Like that's like some Udonis Haslem hybrid Dwayne Wade together mixed up. Like when you're talking about your star leader and the way that he conducts himself on the court, it was just a page out of their playbook. And I'm sure that they're happy that that lineage is being passed down.
Well, here we go. We got another quote from Alex. Jimmy Butler on the CP3 incident. Yeah, you're not gonna throw the ball at my teammate like that. Yeah, I got a turnover, got an offensive foul. You don't do that here. So again, drawing the line that he's going to defend his guys, and I do feel, and we're not going to talk about Jimmy a whole lot on this one because we had some other things on our list, but between the way he went after T.J. Warren on social media, and then tonight, like Jimmy's feeling good. Right? Like, I feel like you only get chirping, you know,
yeah, if he was mad at the way his team was playing, you wouldn't get that right now.
No, exactly. Like Jimmy's feeling like he has a chance. And I can tell you that people around him keep telling me this team's coming out of the East. Now, I know they're close to Jimmy and probably can't, you know, maybe be as objective as some others, but I've been hearing that for the last 3 weeks. They're coming out of the East.
I don't know if they're coming out of the East, but I will say that when they were playing their guys, and it wasn't Chris Silva, and it wasn't Gabe Vincent, and it wasn't Solomon Hill, even though, like, listen, I keep eating my Solomon Hill crow, right? Like, I feel like he's played pretty well.
You see that crossover, man? My God.
I mean, no, the man's playing ball right now. But what I will say is when they're playing their guys and they look locked in on winning, I mean, they look badass. Like, they really do. Like, they beat Boston when they were playing their guys, and they beat Boston without Jimmy. They demolished the Pacers and the hottest guy in the bubble with T.J. Warren. No points in the second half. Like, this guy has been lighting people up for 40, 50 points, and no points in the second half, and beat them by 22. When the Heat are running on full cylinders in the all cylinders in the bubble, like, they look good. And they look really good. Like I said, I'm not going to sit there and say they're coming out of the East, but I can see why people around Jimmy feel good because they're playing defense. The offense looks okay. Like, you got to feel good about where the Heat are right now going into the playoffs.
All right, we'll get to number 3 here in a second. Before we do, I want to tell you about another great sponsor of the 5 Reasons Sports Network, and that's our friend Louis Peters over at State Farm. This is an agent representing the #1 auto and home insurer in the entire United States. Got more than 60 years of combined experience in the insurance industry. These are local agents that understand South Florida's unique market. They've got access there 24/7, so click in or call in. Again, it's louispeters.com, LUIS Peters.com, or you can also find him at SF Agent Peters. You can argue Dolphins and Heat stuff with him. He knows his stuff. 305-275-5585. Again, that's louispeters.com. You need personalized service that's tailored to every customer. There are no cookie cutter solutions in insurance. Again, the phone number, 305-275-5585 or louispeters.com. All right, let's get to number 3, the biggest developments in the bubble. We've got all these guys are back with me now. Alex is off the calls. Was there anything else in the calls we should get to before? We read a couple of your quotes.
Did you read the Jimmy ones?
We read the Jimmy one. There was more, I guess, but he basically said don't come after my shooters, right?
Yeah, he said you mess with one of my guys, especially one of my shooters, you got to deal with me and everybody else.
Well, there you go.
Along with everything else. I mean, I love it.
Jimmy had another great quote about Tyler Herro. He said about his
Yep.
improvement around the rim. It's not surprising to me. He's always studying the film. The kid just wants to be great. Spo also followed that up about Herro, saying countless endless hours putting the ball on the floor and finishing with both hands. Tyler has a feel for putting the ball in the basket. Unique creativity. They're loving themselves some Tyler Herro ball right now.
And it's
Okay, what
funny-
about Solomon Hill? What did they say
Oh,
about Solomon Hill?
Look, I know that you feel badly about all the Solomon Hill takes.
And what Solomon Hill takes? Like, come on.
You were wrong, just like you're wrong about your eye test yesterday. But look, we've got to move on to the next
Honestly,
one.
there's been more research on the eye test, and there's
well,
a lot
I'm
of
gonna let
people on
Alex-
Twitter agreeing with me.
At the end of this, I'm going to allow you to defend yourself. But let's get through.
No, I'm good.
Get through these.
I was just wrong. There's no defending. Like I was just wrong.
We'll get to it at the end. All right. But I will say this: we were worried about Tyler Herro being distracted when he came into the bubble. He hasn't been distracted, so maybe it's been a good thing. That
Well, Hero scored 25, more than 25, and they lost. So there you go, Alf.
Well, that's your
Bang dead.
All right, let's get to number 3. And I think we do need to address this. Actually, I'm going to flip the order of these because I want to get to the other one, the more negative one, in a second. Let's focus on some of the decisions that Spoelstra made. And the big decision that he made was less Myers-Leonard, a lot less, more wings, and more Kelly Olynyk. So basically, playing smaller, playing more flexible, more switching, DJJ, Kelly getting a lot of those minutes. We've all kind of come full circle on this, where I think we all kind of were surprised Myers wasn't playing, and now we can see some of the logic of why they made the decision. But we didn't expect it necessarily coming in, right, Greg?
No, there was no indication that Myers-Leonard was going to go from full-time starter in the best lineups, from an analytic perspective and record-wise all year, to just essentially out of rotation. So that came out of left field, but it's funny because you're right. The more that we've watched it, it seems like it was almost like we should have intuited it way before that, because it's unlocked a lot of things that I think hoped that the trade would have unlocked. But if you kept playing as many bigs as they were, it was going to be difficult to get to some of this stuff. So it kind of cleared up some things in terms of the way that the roster was constructed that I think is important. And it'll be interesting to see how much DJJ run we get, particularly in the Indy series. And then if they were to get through that, the complete difference that they can go with some of these wings, and you may not see them in the next series, that kind of stuff. So it came out of left field, but now it makes a ton of sense.
What do we think about the way Kelly's played in the bubble? Because we had the bubble Kelly thing, the bubble KO thing, and he was really, really hot for the first 2 or 3 games, and then really cooled off, and even his minutes did come back a little bit as we went forward. Are we comfortable with him as the only other big along with Bam Adebayo at this point?
Absolutely. Just because you see the way that Myers has been playing, I don't know if you're going to trust Chris Silva in the playoff series. But Kelly, but Kelly, what I will say is, no matter how he's shooting percentage-wise, you have to respect his shot. And then he's also just a really, really good playmaker. And we've talked about it ad nauseum on this show, that if you're not starting Myers-Leonard with Bam, there's no other place to put Myers in later on in the game. Like there's not a lot of opportunities, because not a lot of other teams play 2 bigs off the bench. And you're not going to sit Kelly with the way he's playing, with the way he's shooting, the way he's passing, the triple handoffs. Even when he's not shooting the ball well, you have to respect him. And we saw tonight with Myers. Myers is too hesitant on the shot. Like he doesn't command respect from out there, and you're not getting the spacing you get with Kelly.
Yeah, I got to say I agree with everything there. I don't really see a role for Myers on this team if he isn't in the starting lineup. I think it's that simple. Like Al said, he fits well with the starting lineup because he takes some pressure off of Bam to not be the only big in the game. But with Crowder there, they can play a different style. They can kind of blitz a little bit more, switch obviously a little bit more. And I just think in general, like I mentioned earlier, you take out Myers-Leonard and replace him with Derrick Jones Jr., and you also coincidentally at the same time are playing without Kendrick Nunn, and he just look a lot sharper on defense, man.
Well,
Like, I really don't want to like bury the guy or anything. He was obviously a part of a great starting lineup all season, but you got to see the vision here, right? Their biggest weakness was defense, and I think this is just a simple way that they can kind of fix it on the margins.
Well, and when you talk about like burying Myers Leonard, I could also see as we get later into the playoffs, Kelly Olynyk could get buried too, because if you have Bam Adebayo in a game 5 or a game 6 playing 38, 39 minutes, you're essentially going to eliminate the Olynyk minutes to some degree at that point. So do we trust Kelly Olynyk? Yeah, we trust him, but ultimately I think as we get deeper into the playoffs, you don't have to worry about that as much.
All right, let's get to number 4 here. And I think this one is something we talked about for basically the month before the season broke, and then as the season was returning, were they going to get payoff from the Justise Winslow trade? Because they made a decision that was based on the season actually continuing. Then we didn't think it was going to continue. Then it did continue. Then of course there's sort of the side issue, which is very much a side issue of Justise getting hurt again in Memphis. But I mean, there were multiple reasons to make the trade. One of the reasons, obviously, was flexibility in the upcoming offseason, which again, that changes a little bit with what's happened with COVID and China and everything else. And then it was to preserve 2021. It was to move on from a player who really didn't want to be here anymore. But it also was to try to get some value and try to get players who could help you. I think that the bubble season should make people feel a hell of a lot better about the trade, if only because you got a guy, and I know we've talked about it repeatedly. You got rid of 3 guys who weren't playing, but you got a guy who's shooting 60% from 3 of the bubble, and another guy who's playing heavy minutes off the bench. Does this alone? I mean, if you get these kind of performances from Crowder and Iguodala, I mean, Crowder's not going to shoot 60% in the first round, but if you get the kind of playing time and performances contributions they're getting, does it just validate the trade on its own? Like, we don't even need to see what happens in the future if Jay resigns, what they do with Iguodala's contract, etc.
Oh, that's a tough one. I don't know about validating the trade just off of that. You got to be happy with the output that the guys have given the Heat.
I'm going to tell you, Alex, stop.
But we know what the trade was really about, though. Like, we know that Crowder and Iguodala, it's about getting defensive bodies, and I've been with him, man. We know that they needed the defensive bodies, but we know that at the end of the day, it's about the money, man. It's about what they do with that money. No,
it's not just about the money. That's
the biggest thing to me.
Dude, it's about trading 3 guys that
oh my God.
Come on. Let's stop playing around. Listen, we've all had the same discussions with people. Not as many as Ethan has, but we've had the same discussions. We've talked to people around the Heat, people, insiders, quote unquote. And we know that they traded 3 guys that either they didn't want to play for the Heat, or the Heat didn't want them to play.
3 guys with baggage. That's the fair way.
3 guys with baggage for 3 guys that they actually liked and 3 guys that could play.
Yes, that's fair. That's fair. But I think that's number 2 to having cap flexibility, because I think we saw it. They were about to pull the trigger on Gallinari. The only reason they didn't was because of the extra year or whatever.
Okay.
But clearly that was what they're going for, and that's what they're going for with having this flexibility.
You can talk about money. If James Johnson and Dion Waiters were playing at 30 and 11 levels and weren't complaining about their roles, and Justise Winslow was able to get on the court, money wouldn't have mattered. So we can talk about cap flexibility all we want. The fact that the guys
I would have loved to get James Johnson and Dion playing at 30 and 11 level, but so would the Heat for the last 3 years.
What I'm saying. It's not just about money. It's the fact that these guys, you couldn't trust them to be there from game to game. Like, look what's happening with Dion having a big role on the Lakers.
I'm not disagreeing with the trade. Hey, whoa, where are we going here? Dion's role with the Lakers, the jury's still out, all right?
Okay, yeah.
I will hold that Dion is an upgrade over Avery Bradley in 2020. No, but I don't disagree with what you're saying about the trade. I'm just saying I still want to wait to see what happens, because we know how they are, and we know that they targeted a Gallinari. We've been talking about guys that they may potentially look at with a 1-year deal. I'm still waiting on that, just because it's kind of what the signs are telling us about where the Heat are going this offseason.
Listen,
at the end of the day, right? They're better with this trade this season. Absolutely, they've been better
with this season and the next.
Probably,
this season and the next. So that means the trade was successful. Like, let's stop talking about 1-year deals, cap flexibility. Let's stop talking about all that. None of that matters. The trade was an absolute. the trade is a success. If they don't sign a single person with any of that cap flexibility, it doesn't matter. The trade was a success.
I'll be good with the trade if they don't sign anybody with it. If they can re-sign everybody, it'll be all right. I'll be okay with it.
So
But it'll
it
be a
don't
slight
matter what, the
disappointment.
trade is going to be a success.
Yes, but at the end of the day, man, I'm just saying, like, we know the reasons. I'm not going to go over this whole Winslow thing again. We all, like, really wanted point Justice. We saw the potential there. The only thing is, if Justice was like 5, 7, 8 years older, it would have felt a little bit more fair. They obviously gave up on one of the younger guys. They had to do it. It was the only way that they could also get rid of Dion and JJ. It was a very convenient trade for all the reasons you said. And it was a successful trade. You're right. At the end of the day, I think they could have got a little bit more. I'm going to stand on that. And I think they could have gotten a little bit. They feel that way too, because they almost pulled the trigger. They were about to do it for Gallinari. And I'm waiting on something else to happen this summer.
But Alex, let me jump in, and we wanted to let you guys go because I like this argument, and I like the fact that we still haven't cleared it up.
I'm surprised we even brought back the Winslow thing, but I'm always ready.
But look, it hangs over this team to a certain degree. But let me throw one more thing at you guys that we haven't really talked about, but it's in the context of what we talked about earlier in this episode, which is what we're starting to see with Tyler Herro with the ball in his hands, okay, is what we were starting to see with Justise Winslow last year. And what I wonder is, would we have as much room for growth for Tyler Herro if Justise Winslow was still here? Like, to me,
definitely not.
Right. So isn't that another win? Like, I'm with Alf that it's already a win. I think it's more of a win if you can find a way to re-sign Jay at a decent number. And then
I don't even necessarily disagree with that.
Okay, but I'm saying I think it's already a win that has the potential now. I don't think there's any way it's a loss at this stage. I think it's already a win, and it has a potential to be a bigger win if they re-sign Jay for a decent number, if they make something with the Iguodala contract, if they're able to use the cap flexibility to get a player, then it's a bigger win. But the other win that we really haven't talked about is, in some ways, if Justise Winslow's ultimate upside was not as great as we thought it was, okay, whether because of injuries or maybe attitude or whatever, then in a sense, even at his age, Justise Winslow would become a progress stopper potentially for Tyler Herro. If you want to see more growth from Tyler, and if the Heat's two best offensive players, and it's looking like it in the bubble, are going to be Tyler Herro and Duncan Robinson, whereas Jimmy and Bam might be their two best players, but that Tyler and Duncan may be their two most important offensive players going forward, where does Justise fit there? He doesn't. Right?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
They ultimately they made the decision that team option on Justise in 2021 was not going to be picked up. And at that point, when you're in that kind of frenzy, he was just going to walk for nothing. And that's how that was going to play itself out. So at that point, you take the chance of bringing in guys that can contribute, and you can re-up with Jay Crowder potentially for 1 year. I think he'll be open-minded to a 1-year deal. So you're helping yourself this season with functional guys that can get on the court. And also you've now opened up, options with guys that you can potentially play with for the next season as well.
Right. And also I think a healthy Justise Winslow is just as big a gamble as a healthy Andre Iguodala at this point. Like a healthy Justise Winslow. Like,
honestly, do we have to keep? Wow. Honestly, Alf, after where we were at the beginning of the season, you're now saying he's almost the same player as Andre Iguodala in 2020.
But
yes, I am, because I haven't seen it from Justise Winslow.
But we saw it in the beginning of the season. How many times have you brought up that Raptors game?
We saw it for the first game.
I said a healthy Justise Winslow is a gamble to even get him healthy. Right. That's the biggest problem.
Saying a healthy Justise is comparable to Andre.
No, a healthy Justise Winslow is exactly what this team needs right now. The problem is him being healthy is a huge gamble. Yeah. Like, we have no idea what a healthy Justise Winslow looks like more than playing at a high level for a full season. We just don't.
I will say this, and I want to close the book on Justice again. I'm sure we'll reopen it.
We'll reopen this soon enough.
Please, God, no.
128
Justise Winslow?
I didn't. When Justise was traded, I spoke to a lot of people in the organization, including people associated with players, including players. And even though there was a lot of admiration for Justise as a person in a lot of quarters, and they liked having Justise. Justise is a likable person, and they thought he had upside. I didn't hear anybody who said they thought that this was going to be a trade the Heat regretted. Nobody. And the Heat have made trades where I've talked to people and they've been like, ooh, why do we do that?
But this one was just so convenient. It felt like it was never really going to be regretted. It was
No,
very,
it wasn't
like,
going to be
it makes so
regretted
much sense.
because of JJ and Dion, but also if you're trading a player that people thought was potentially the future of the franchise in some capacity, and Justice said he wanted to be a face of the franchise, there would be other people in the organization, including players, who are like, what did we just do? And I didn't get that from anybody. Okay, it had already been established that Bam was the future of the franchise in terms of the young players, and there was a feeling. Nobody talked about Duncan at that time, but there was a feeling that Herro had a chance to be special. And so, if that's the case, then parting with somebody like Justise ultimately was not that big a deal. So I get it that everybody wanted him to be something, but I mean, I've seen some ball handling chops from Herro in the past 2 weeks that, it took Justise forever to get to, and so I just think, I think at this point, we're going to close the book on it for now. All right, before we get to number 5 here, I want to tell you about another of the great sponsors of the 5 Reasons Sports Network. I had 3 of these while I was waiting for Alex and Alf to finish that argument. That's Biscayne Bay Brewing, the official craft beer of Inter Miami and the Miami Marlins and South Florida's Sports Network, which is 5 Reasons Sports Network. This is South Florida's actual independent brewery. Biscayne Bay is owned by local guys who employ people in this community to make their beer right here in South Florida. These guys are committed to our community and support 5 Reasons Sports so we can keep bringing you all the local sports content that you can handle. If you care about supporting local business and drinking amazing beer, grab their stuff, whether Marlins Lager, Miami Pale Ale, or Tropical Bay IPA, at all major retailers throughout South Florida. It's the beer we're drinking at 5 Reasons Sports. And now that I'm out of quarantine, I'm going to pick the stuff up, Matt. So we're getting the beer, and I'm going to bring it to Alex and to Alf. Not to you, Greg. You live too far away, but the rest of you guys will get it. All right, let's get to number 5 here. And this is the one disappointment of the bubble, which has been we never saw the best of Kendrick Nunn, at least not before the playoffs. Is his role salvageable at this point? He's had a run of bad luck personally and health-wise. And then obviously, there were some focus issues that were discussed and other things like that, but mostly personal and health-wise, and just wasn't playing particularly well and can't seem to catch a break, honestly. What are we going to see from Kendrick Nunn in the postseason? Alex?
I mean, honestly, I really hope that he gets a chance to be back in the starting lineup soon. I think, like I mentioned so many other times, I think he's a perfect fit, especially if you've already got another playmaker out there. I think he's perfect in that starting lineup, man. I really do. And because we know how Spo uses his rotations, we know that K Nunn isn't necessarily closing. I think he's just an awesome fit there. And I really hope that he actually gets a chance to go back into that role instead of being moved to an off-the-bench role where I fear he may not look as good and it might just continue that slump. Whereas kind of getting him back in the starting lineup might give him that confidence where, he's playing off of Jimmy and Bam and Duncan and what they kind of, them being the center of the defensive strategy. And I think him hitting, those first couple of jumpers coming off of some screens and getting some easy points is really going to get some confidence in him. I would like to see him there. And also, we're really going to talk about moving forward, the Mitchell and the Beals and the Oladipos of the world. Kendrick Nunn is going to be a part of that trade, right? I think. Yeah, I knew Leif would mention that at some point, but you need him to be playing good and for other teams to be impressed with him, which I think he kind of checked off the boxes all season long. So I would like him to get back to that, even if you don't end up trading him. I just think he makes a lot of sense there.
I've always called the Heat the asset manufacturers, and this was a season like no other in that regard. We got Duncan Robinson, and you got obviously Herro and Bam all of a sudden is becoming, an unprecedented type asset from a value perspective. And then you start to talk about the gravy, and Kendrick Nunn was one of those guys that you just to end up getting another player that was on a minimum deal, rookie, you don't expect much, and he's starting the entire season and averaging, 15 a game, one of the top rookies. You want to hope that that's salvageable. And a lot has to do with, the on the court stuff. They need him, his shot creation, his scoring, that stuff cannot be discounted. So it's not just purely about the transaction, but when you look forward, when you started to map out who you really wanted to keep on the roster and the guys that if you had to part with, you would. Kendrick Nunn was starting to be framed up as that guy, and he was good enough to actually fetch you a player that you would want to have. So you hope that he can kind of regain some of that, and the playoffs are the best time to do that because people have short memories.
Alf, we've talked about him in the context of maybe surprising people again, that he seems to keep beating the odds here. You know, he wasn't really supposed to make the roster. Well, first, I mean, he wasn't somebody the Heat were even supposed to keep. I mean, when they made that move last year, you know, there was a feeling that he might be picked up just so he would be filler to try to pick up Jimmy in the offseason. I mean, that was a theory that was going around NBA circles. And he ends up not only making the team, starting the first game, playing gangbusters out of the gate. I mean, he was tremendous for like the first 2-3 weeks, hitting a bit of a wall, getting over the wall, getting over the Achilles injury, playing well in the Rising Stars, coming out of the break on fire. I mean, if you look at his numbers, he shot the ball extremely well out of the All-Star break. And it just seems like nothing's gone right now, but I kind of feel like it's too early to write him off, because every time we've done that, you know, he's shown up. It's just, I've been waiting for it to happen in the bubble. It hasn't happened yet.
Well, to me, that's why you start him on Friday and you start him going into the playoffs, especially when you're facing an Indiana team that you're very, very, very confident against. Oladipo, I know he's been playing well, but you know, you could stick Jimmy on Oladipo, you could stick Jay Crowder on TJ Warren, and you don't have a lot of problems. I think he could stay with a guy like Malcolm Brogdon. If Malcolm Brogdon's going off on you for 25, 30 points, I don't think the Pacers want that. I don't think that's their formula to win. So I think you can play Kendrick Nunn heavy minutes against the Pacers, let him get his footing back, his timing back, his legs back. Because to me, if the choice is either starting Kendrick Nunn or Goran Dragic, and Herro isn't in Spo's thoughts as a starter, I'd rather just start Kendrick Nunn, because the upside to Kendrick starting and Goran coming off the bench is so much higher than Goran starting and then trying to run a Kendrick Nunn, Tyler Herro tandem off the bench. So to me, you start Kendrick Nunn, you let him get his footing back. You hopefully I'm not even talking about increasing his trade value or anything like that. I'm just talking about purely just getting his confidence back against a team that you could probably take out in 5 or 6 games at the most.
I think, Alf, what we may be looking at is that the Dragic, we've bandied about what the possibilities are. Would it be Herro? Would it be Dragic? Would it be Nunn? The Dragic starting lineup may end up being the in case of emergency lineup. Like,
yeah, because I don't think Herro's not starting.
Herro's not starting. That's clear. But what I'm saying is, you may be right that it's Nunn. You get him the few minutes in each half. You see if he's going, if he gets his confidence back. But ultimately, if they get into a game 7, Goran's going to start.
Or like if you go down 2-1 or you go down 3-2, like that kind of thing, then you can insert Goran and it just kind of it's seamless.
You would just hope that it doesn't come to that against the Pacers, right?
Well, you would hope, and so let's close it there. Let's get into it there real quick. We're going to do a lot more on this over the next few days. Obviously, they got a game on Friday against Indiana, but it's going to be one of those don't show anything, don't play too many people. We're not going to pod after it. We'll probably do another pregame stream. Maybe we'll join you during it at some point. But just to get into Pacers Heat a little, because I don't want to get into it a lot. We've got 2 really good guests coming on that cover the Pacers full time. They're going to be coming on with us on Sunday. Let's do this legitimately, 30 seconds or less, guys. Okay? Give me your case for how the Heat could lose this series, because we all seem confident that they're going to win it. Give me a case. Alex unmuted first, so you're up. Give me a case for how the Heat lose this series. 30 seconds or less.
I was ready to do the confident Heat Fed thing. I was ready to do the Heat and 5
that's why,
thing.
When you
that's a good question,
first,
though.
I decided to change midair. Like I jumped past, basically.
Good shot fake. Very Duncan Robinson-esque for you to fake and then run around the screen. And okay. So basically, I think for the Heat to lose to the Pacers, we know one thing is that they like to give up a lot of threes. We know that Brogdon can shoot. We know that Warren has turned into a very good shooter since the bubble started. We'll see if that lasts in the series. We know that Oladipo has also kind of found his shot since the bubble resumed. And it would have to be some type of three-point explosion. It would have to be a lot of Oladipo and Brogdon and Warren getting past their man and creating, collapsing and passing out to threes and just some type of like constant 3-point explosion. I think that's the only way, really, because I think if you were telling me a healthy Pacers team with Sabonis and without TJ Warren having plantar fasciitis and with Oladipo being 100% healthy, I think this would be a 7-game series. And I don't even think we would have to be selling ourselves into the Heat losing the series. I wouldn't be surprised if the Pacers were to like come out in 7 if they were healthy, but they're not. So I think it would have to take some type of crazy 3-point explosion for the Heat to lose this one. Heat in 5.
Yeah, I
All
mean,
right, that
like,
was 5 30-second things. So neither
I'll
of you
give you
have to
30.
talk
I'll
now.
give you an efficient 30 seconds.
Okay.
So essentially, I mean, Alex touched on a lot of this already. And remember, they're also missing Jeremy Lamb, who was a starter and a really good contributor throughout the season. So they are not whole whatsoever, and I wouldn't expect Sabonis. They don't shoot threes, and the Heat shoot a lot of threes. So one thing that's going to have to change is the Pacers are going to have to shoot a ton of threes, and they're going to have to make them. The Heat are going to have to miss their threes. So we're getting super basic here. And then this is the other one, is that if the Pacers really intend to beat the Heat in this series shorthanded, Miles Turner is going to have to match Bam Adebayo. And if that doesn't happen and the shooting doesn't kind of completely flip-flop, I just don't see a path where it isn't the customary Heat in 5.
Alf, you got 10 seconds now.
Yeah, it's all silly. Nate McMillan is not going to coach a team that's going to outsmart Eric Spoelstra and somehow turn a team that doesn't shoot threes into a team that's hitting a bunch of them. So that's not going to happen. The only way that this goes to a 6 or 7 game series is if the Heat get an injury. That's the only way. This is Heat in 5.
And which injury?
It has to be either Bam, Goran, or Butler.
I think it's got to be Bam.
But honestly, yeah, you're probably right. If they could win without Butler or Goran, yeah. I think it would have to take a significant injury.
What about Duncan?
Guys.
Don't touch Duncan Robinson, damn it,
bro.
Do they win without Duncan?
You guys are just jinxing shit right now. Like, what is wrong with you?
Ethan put the question there. I don't
listen. It would take a significant injury to 2 of those 3 guys. We're not even going to talk about Duncan Robinson. I would never even have brought his name up. You jinx.
Ethan, the non-Heat fan, has to bring up Heat injuries. This is not cool.
I'm the one who brought up Heat injuries. You're the one. You're the ones who are bringing up Duncan Robinson, who has never been injured.
Ethan asked who, and I thought Ethan was saying Goran is more important, and I thought that was a hot take.
All right, you know what? Take this, the eye test and the Justise Winslow argument off the pod. That's it for today. Again, you can find us on Nothing But Net Radio every day from 10 to 11 a.m. We will have an episode of Floor's Yours coming up on our YouTube channel on Thursday night, so make sure that you check that out as well as 5reasonsports.com. Biscayne Bay Brewing, SafeCubbies.com, YouBreakWheelFix.com, LouisPeters.com, KeystoneChiropractic.com, and all of our other sponsors. I'm stopping here. The 2 of you can go on our text string. I'm muting you. Have a good night.
Thank you for listening to the 5 on the Floor on the 5 Reasons Sports Network.